This podcast is part of the TrekSphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit TrekSphere.com. Greetings and salutations. As you know, this is The Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek proper Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And I don't even want to say not just whatever, because I don't want you to know what I think of the episode. I really want to hear just what you think of the episode. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And the criteria by which we judge these episodes. Number one, is there science fiction inherent and explored in the plot? Very important word, explored. Is it explored in the plot? Number two, is that science fiction unique or novel in some way? And number three, is there a tale of morality, an ethical dilemma in the episode? I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan. And this week we watched The Visitor. Sorry, I'm just Netflix. It's so bad.
Yeah.
And this week we watched The Visitors, episode 2 of season 4 of Deep Space Nine of Star Trek. And it says, aspiring writer Melanie wants to know why Jake Sisko stopped writing at 40. Jake explains how his father died in an accident and then reappeared.
I mean, this can only fuel the blurb writer's hate of Star Trek even more. It's like, none of these episodes make any sense.
Right. He's like, who's this girl? Oh, it's Melanie. All right.
She must be a main character from before that I didn't see, because I don't care.
Right. All right, I'll pull up the Paramount one.
I have the Amazon one. When a tragic accident causes Sisko to vanish before his son's eyes, young Jake begins a lifelong obsession to bring him back. That's on point.
It is.
Unlike Netflix.
Unlike Netflix. It's just so bad.
That's a great one, though. That's one for the books, right?
Just with how bad it is?
How bad it is. And
yes.
how obvious the person did not watch the episode.
Right. Yeah, the last time we had something like that, and I mentioned this before, is when he talked about Kai Wynn and he's talking about what he was doing.
Well, okay, so let's say the average cold open is 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
Is that so? And there are 700 episodes
of Star Trek. Yeah.
Still, like, how long of a commitment is that?
Right, just watching the cold opens.
Half minute? Yeah.
No, because it's closer to 800, so it's actually 1,600 minutes. But then I have to divide 1,600 by 24, which is hard.
Oh, I'm so disappointed. You're supposed to have those numbers like ready to go. In your head.
So it's it's roughly 65 days. So
that's still a big commitment.
Yeah, it is. Of watching 2-minute blurbs.
Even for DS9. There's 178 episodes of DS9, I think. Times 2 is 360 minutes roughly. So that's not too bad of a commitment. Because obviously the other shows are not as bad as DS9, at least that we found.
Yeah.
So 360 minutes. How many hours is that?
6
hours.
Yeah.
That's still a lot.
Well, and it's funny too because like even going back to the blurbs, the Paramount one doesn't talk about Jake at all. An accident on the USS Defiant traps Ben Sisko in subspace.
Yeah.
Like I feel like which one did you do? Amazon?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Amazon and the Paramount one combined tell you everything you need to know. The Netflix one doesn't even come close.
I feel like the Amazon is most faithful to the episode. This is what it's about. When a tragic accident causes Sisko to vanish before his son's eyes, young Jake begins a lifelong obsession to bring him back. That's what happens in the episode.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
It just doesn't mention what happened, like
to Sisko.
That Sisko was trapped in subspace. Yeah.
So anyway, enough about the blurb. So you want to hear what I thought?
I do.
The episode?
Yes.
This is, so far, my favorite DS9 episode. I felt like this, it actually reminded me of All Good Things.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of structure and kind of what's happening. You know, we're going back and forth between different, not timelines, I guess, because we're just seeing him age naturally.
Right.
But we get little snippets of him. It felt very science fiction-esque to me.
Yes.
It felt like they weren't. I mean, there was it had its DS9 caveats, but I loved it. I watched it at regular speed. I think we slowed it down.
Right,
regular speed at 1.5.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it was too slow at one speed.
right.
Tony Todd was really hamming it up a little bit. I will say, Tony Todd does a better Cisco than Cisco does, because he does kind of look like, obviously they cast him. Part of the reason is that he kind of resembles Avery Brooks, and also resembles Jake. And
Right.
so I felt like he was kind of tasked to do. You got to do a Jake, but you also have to do a Ben Cisco because that's your dad, and they have to be similar. And it just
right.
felt really well executed. I felt like I kind of wish Tony Todd was Cisco. I know
Right.
that's blasphemous, but
Just like in an alternate universe or something, yeah.
but I really enjoyed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the reason why that they brought in a different actor for Jake and not for anybody else is just because they didn't think they could do a good job aging up, I think, 17-year-old
That would have
Jake.
been terrible.
to-
That would
yeah,
have been
to look 70, yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
Right. But they didn't do that. Yeah. So, all right. So you think this is the best DS9 episode. How do you feel as far as Star Trek goes?
I mean, it's up there. I could very well see this be. I mean, this is kind of like a very similar, like, Inner Light type of. Not really, but in sense of structure and that kind of thing. It felt like I could see this being on Next Gen. It had that kind of plotline.
Right.
And I guess maybe because none of the other other crewmen were in it, didn't have to worry about them. I guess, at least for long periods of time. I felt like they could concentrate on. I mean, they did kind of. There were points where old Jake were just sort of talking and talking and talking. I was like, okay, we get it, right?
Right.
We understand what's happening. That's nitpicking. I felt like it was cool. I mean, what did you think? We've not heard what you think.
No, I think this is a great episode. And I've remembered this one since we first started the podcast 2 years ago, and so I've been anxiously looking forward to getting to it, just because you don't like Deep Space Nine, and so I really wanted to hear your thoughts on it. And it was nice to actually do some research on it, because this is considered one of the best Star Trek episodes, and one of the
Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was actually voted the best in a couple of voter polls, and there was just a fun comment about how, like, one of the best Star Trek episodes comes from the least preferred series.
Is DS9 considered the least preferred series?
Before all the new series came out, yeah. I don't know where it falls now. I'm sure that some people are on board with Deep Space Nine just because it is classic Trek. And they don't like any of the new Trek until it becomes classic Trek again. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of for the same reason that you don't like. There's more political intrigue, and there's more of like the seedy underbelly of Starfleet that hadn't shown up by this point, and so it just kind of left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I love this episode. I think it's great. It's kind of interesting too, just as far as our criteria goes, because it nails everything. But it's also, because it deals with time travel, like not time travel, because it deals with like taking somebody out of time, you could change the explanation for it and put it in any other sci-fi show. Like, there's nothing about this that makes it specifically Star Trek, just because it is dealing with two characters. And so any show that has two characters that have a romantic attachment, whether it's love or family, like you could do this episode and it would work just as well.
Yeah, but it did feel like it was nested in the lore of Star Trek in a way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It didn't just feel like generic with Star Trek decals on it. It felt like, while maybe you could do this episode in some other science fiction show, it did feel like it would be missing something.
Right.
There was something about it that felt very Trek, and I think that's why maybe people like it, is it because it feels like it nests nicely into the universe.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Discovery.
Well, and it's interesting too, just this episode, kind of throws off a couple of things that happen in Discovery. They talk about like how did we ever work with two-dimensional consoles?
Oh, I was going to bring that up later. You are hereby vindicated, sir. I'm talking to Picard. Sorry, not you.
Oh,
Picard.
okay.
I should have said that at the beginning of the sentence. But, I was bitching about in Picard, they have these 3-dimensional control surfaces where they're driving ships, kind of in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
I think the pretty lights rant that I had about that, I guess no longer applies because this was predicted in this episode.
Well,
right?
Yes, but we also didn't see it, so I assumed that you just meant like with the advancement of special effects technology, they wanted to show off these fancy effects, which they did with episode 2 of Picard. I don't know if you saw that or not, but not only did he have the 3-dimensional console, but his screen that he was looking at was moving with his face. Did you see that?
Yeah, which would be super distracting.
Yeah.
To not be able to look away from a screen.
Yeah. The technology in Star Trek, I get that, it's literally manhandled outside of what we see, and also the sound effects are added in later. But what makes the technology in Star Trek so impressive is that it knows what you want to do. So when he pulls up the screen and he's looking around that way, I'm sure that if there was somebody on board that he needed to turn and talk to, the screen would stay in place while he turned to talk to them, and then he would look back and it would catch on to his face. Kind of in the same way where you you can adjust your temperature of hot to be whatever.
And that doesn't apply to the universal definition of hot to
Yes.
all of the computers?
Yes.
That might be the best meme ever. I think.
Yes.
And it's not even a meme that is commentary, social commentary, or political commentary. It's just a fun meme.
Yeah.
I can't not laugh at it.
Listeners will, if you leave this in, we'll put it in the comments or in the notes.
In the show notes. It's the best meme ever.
It really is.
Well, I'm tempted to just not go through the episode beat by beat. We don't really need to do that.
No, it's such a great. I mean, so the show notes to this episode is that they had more scenes with the future characters, specifically between Bashir and O'Brien, but Cole Meany wasn't available because of some movie contract. So they had to take out all of his scenes, and I'm disappointed by that, but I'm also the episode is so good. I can't imagine it would make it better. If anything, it would just detract from what the actual story is that's going on. And so I appreciate that they're not there, but I really would have liked to have seen those scenes.
Yeah, I guess my one complaint about this episode is that it's very heavy with the chatting between old Jake and the lady.
Melanie.
And Melanie. The main character of
right, the aspiring writer, yeah.
Yeah. And I felt like there could have been a little bit more somehow back and forth about him trying to, he stopped writing to become a quantum physicist like you do.
Right.
And more of that, I guess, could have been there. Maybe it was, and they filled it in. They filled Cole Meany's stuff in with just more conversations between those two.
So are you saying there should have been more show, not tell? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm just saying that there was a lot of chatting. It felt like. It was a lot of him reporting to us what was happening. And usually not a good thing, to tell and not show, but whatever. I mean, there were a couple. So here's sort of a big thing that I want to ask you, pose to you. What if this whole episode was told from the point of view of Cisco? Now, obviously, you'd have to change it. But so from what I gather, there is no time that elapses between the different timeline that we see Cisco pop into. He just he's there, and then he's there, and then he's there. It's just like a blink of the eye.
Right.
So it would have been cool that from Cisco's point of view, we just see Jake aging, and he's slowly getting updates as to what's happening. And
Right.
I don't know if you could sustain that over the course of 42 minutes. You would need to do something, have him go somewhere or do something, or meet somebody new or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that could have been equally as cool, I think, to show it from that point of view. Because then it would have been less of an emotional episode, I guess, and more of a very hard science fiction. Because it would have been cool to see Jake slowly getting older.
Right.
And the progress they're making on how to cut that line that they were talking about at the end to free him from subspace. It would have been a fun exploration of that. But I it's not like that would have necessarily been better. It's just a different way to do it. It struck me.
Right. I feel like that's very all good things. If we followed Ben's perspective and every time he turned around, the timeline had jumped forward and people were saying like, we've moved on without you and this is what's going on.
Yeah. And there could have been times where he interrupts them from having sex.
Sure.
As he does in this episode already. And I
Making
love
my
it that
grandchildren.
Ew. But he does do that. He cock blocks his own son. They're about to
Yeah.
have sex.
Yep.
And he's like, tell me about your life.
Now, Dad? Like,
Now, yeah. Can you come back in like 7 minutes? Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off, I think. Right? I cut you off.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Doesn't matter. But yeah, it would have started to feel a lot more like All Good Things. You're right. Because in All Good Things, there's a point in All Good Things where they totally eliminate the sort of disorientation of Picard
Yes.
when he's jumping between. He just jumps right into it. And
Yeah.
it's so seamlessly done and when well done in the show. It's so good. That's such a good
So good. Yeah.
episode. There are some people who hate on it, though. I don't understand.
Really? Well, they're
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, just categorically. Like, there's nothing.
Stop listening.
Yeah, and just thinking about it a little bit more, like it would be fun to watch, but because of where he was, I mean, we'd have to get scenes of him in subspace trying to figure something out as well that he could share with them. Because,
But see, okay,
otherwise-
I have to say something about that. So that was one logical thing, or I guess show or plot logic that didn't make sense. Because in the first 9/10 of the episode, and I inferred that it is an instantaneous jump between all the different times that Cisco is getting into. He experiences no time. Like if to him the warp core breach or whatever happened by the end of the episode happened 30 seconds ago or whatever it is, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So there's no lapse of time except when Jake goes into the
yep.
subspace thing at the end with him, and there's like a place for him to go.
Yeah.
That didn't make any sense to me. So I guess they had to have that scene so there would be time to talk about it. But that's where it kind of broke down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't have to happen in subspace. It could have been that Bashir and Dax were on the bridge monitoring those things just because the warp core was unstable. And so if anything happened, like they were reluctant enough to let Jake go down there. But the fact that he was so insistent, they let him do it, but they were going to stay on the bridge. And so when Ben showed up, they could have had that conversation right there rather than in subspace. But yeah, I mean, and the fact that he was in there when he came back, it should have been like 2 years had lapsed or something like that. And he was just stranded in space because the Defiant was no longer there.
Well, and Cisco would come out if there was actually time that would elapse, he would come out a crazy person, right? Because he effectively was, for most of his life, I guess he would have died too. Because I think Jake at the end of the episode is as old as he's 80, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So,
70s,
but he,
80s, yeah.
while he was still alive, Cisco would just be a madman from just boredom because he would have been sitting in that white room.
Right.
Actually, he would have died of starvation. So never mind.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Like being an imperial or an ethereal imperial. Being in an ethereal place with a corporeal body. Like, yeah, he would have. Like the next time he shows up, he's just dead. And then the next time he shows up, it's a skeleton. And
It's okay, Dad. I'll get us out of this. I like the idea the skeleton still has the communicator badge on him.
Yeah.
But no clothes.
It's it's that kind of continuity. Right. Well, it's continuity errors that Star Trek does all the time. Like, I wish I had an example. I don't. Never mind.
I was waiting. I thought
I know.
You got one.
I know. Yeah.
So I know what you're going to say. That's because you already said it. That this hits all of the 3 criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure if it hits the 3rd. I'm not sure that there is an ethical dilemma here. Because here's why. Here's why I'm saying this.
Okay.
Because Jake doesn't seem to have any qualms. He seems to be resolute throughout the entire episode in what he wants to do. So I don't see him ever making any hard decisions. Even in killing himself by the end, he wasn't even going to be talked out of that. He just does it. I think it's at the beginning of the episode. So, in a way, it's not proper Star Trek, or our criteria is bad.
No, I think that I was thinking about that too, but I think that the fact that so many people pushed him to do the right thing, and he even did. You know, he said, like, time passed and my concern for my dad faded, and I got married, and and I wrote and all that sort of thing. So he did let that go until he saw his dad again at his house. And so he doubled down on his conviction at that point, but that was against what everyone else was telling him. Like Kira was saying, you need to let this go. Dax said you need to let this go. His dad said you need to let this go. His wife said you need to let this go. And he did. He did for, however long, like 15, 20 years. But he went back to it. And so, like, he did face it, but it was more that he lost interest in it and then it got renewed. You're right that it wasn't necessarily...
Was it ever a dilemma? What was the dilemma for Jake at any given point? I guess to abandon his dad. But see, here's the thing, though. If he knew if Jake knew that once Jake dies, that this tether between his father and him is broken, and so that will snap Cisco out of this subspace thing, then why did he have to kill himself either? Just live out the rest of his life. And then naturally, when he dies, he can go back. It's like getting to live 2 lives.
Well, he had to do it when his dad was near him.
Oh, right. You're right.
Yeah. When the tether was at its tightest. And I mean the other dilemma that he did face, because we're talking about old Jake, but the young Jake had to face the dilemma of leaving Deep Space Nine.
He was made to do that, though, wasn't he? Like, they made him leave. Kira said, "You can stay now, but you're going to have to leave when I tell you to, because the Klingons are coming."
Right.
And the Klingons, aren't they our friends?
Not in this timeline.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. So I guess so. I can see that through the course of his life that he obviously faced some dilemmas. Are they necessarily present? I guess they're more implied, I guess. So I think that this episode for me is just slipping by in terms of ethical dilemmas are concerned, because he never really faces one. That conversation doesn't happen. There's not a letter from a publisher on his desk that says, "We can publish this, but you can't go back to school. You have to keep," some sort of dilemma. Or, and maybe another scene with his wife where they're waiting. It's like, it's either me or you, which I'm glad that scene was not in there, because we've seen it before and no need to have that scene. So thank you for doing that, writers. But, that never happened. Mm-hmm. So I know that I'm asking for something that I just said I don't want, but in terms of the criteria, is it there?
Right. It's so funny. I feel like we go back to, or at least I go back to this episode so much, but the episode with, well, I guess both of them, the 2 LaForge episodes, where he had to go save his mom and he had to save his killer girlfriend. I have to go back and listen to those episodes and see where we fell on those, because I feel like it's the same kind of thing. Like, there is a moral or ethical dilemma in the episode that people talk to Jordy about, but he's so committed that he doesn't waver on it, you know?
Yeah, I guess there could, like, he's never faced with the dilemma of choosing between two hard choices, I guess. Jordy,
well, he is. The decision is presented to him. It's just his mind is already made up. I think in this case there is a little bit more argument that he did challenge himself with the dilemma, because he did give it up. You know, he did give it up for, like I said, for a couple decades, and then when he saw his dad again, he realized that he did abandon him and he wasn't going to do that again, and so he went back to school. So okay,
I know this doesn't matter. I know this is splitting hairs. If you're still listening, listeners, you won't be soon. If he was, it felt more like he naturally came to the conclusion that it's not as though he was fighting real life with staying connected to his dad and that research. It's that he just kind of naturally drifted back toward his writing and toward a family life. And, you know, he sort of just naturally happened, as opposed to being faced with the decision that you can have a life or you can have your dad's life or whatever. You can have this thing with your dad that will lead nowhere. The episode, for me, did not ever present a moment where he had two very difficult choices, right, and had to make one. They were he kind of just made the hard ones. He left his wife, he went back to school, he left his writing, seemed fine with it, resolute. So I guess we are faced with what Jake wasn't faced with, a hard decision. I'm going to go with it is proper. That's what I'm going with.
Okay, good, because me too. I'm glad I didn't have to argue that further. All right.
Okay, so we did it. It's done.
We didn't. It's totally objective. It's a yes or no, and the episode clearly shows that it's a yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. Yeah. So a proper Star Trek episode. Good job. We did it.
Yeah. Stop saying we did it. There was no strong arming. There was no finagling. Like, it's objective. No. This was very clearly. Like, it checked off all the boxes. This is proper Star Trek. The end.
Okay. Well, in that case,
it's funny though. I'm sad about these great episodes just because our episodes are so short, because there's very little to say about, like, it would have been so cool if they did this, or, you know, anything like that. Like, it's just, this was a great episode.
It's fun to bitch and moan. It's fun to bitch and moan about the bad episodes.
Yeah. Well, and it makes for better listening, obviously, but it makes for longer listening. Like, it's really sad when we get to the great episodes and, like, those episodes are released and they're like 20 minutes long.
Well, it's a break for our listeners. It's like, finally. It doesn't take me so long to get through this episode at 5 speed. I'm sure people listen to us at 5 speed.
I hope not. Like, I'd like to think that we are one of the faster podcasts out there. And so,
I agree.
You know, you really can't listen to us at faster than 1.5 speed without it just becoming gibberish and missing a lot of it. You're literally listening to it so you have something playing in the background, which, if we have any listeners that are doing that with our podcast, that would be amazing.
Well, is it? I do want to ask you, though, when you listen to something at very fast speed, let's say 2 speed almost, like Picard, I know that, like, there's a point where you can still understand what they're saying, but it requires so much focus and attention that it's unsustainable. Has that happened to you too?
Yeah.
It's like I can hear them, but there's a point where even like at like 2.5 speed, I can still pretty much make out what they're saying, but it would be so exhausting to listen to. It's just not worth it.
Right. Yeah. So I will find that I'm either not doing the task I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm not listening to the podcast because it's moving too fast.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Who cares? Who cares? That's what I do.
Yeah. All right. Should we see what we're watching next?
Yes.
Star Trek Enterprise, Season 2, Episode 19, Judgment. And the blurb says, Archer stands accused before a Klingon tribunal of conspiring against the Empire and faces a lifetime sentence on Ruapente. Ruapente is in Star Trek The Final Frontier? No, Star Trek The Last something. What's the last original series movie? What's it called?
Insurrection?
Undiscovered Country.
Oh, the original series, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. I think Ruapente is that.
Interesting, okay.
I think that Kirk and Bones. Is Kirk and Bones or is it Spock? No, it's Bones. They go to Ruapente because they are sentenced by probably the same tribunal.
Okay. I think this is the episode that makes fun of the Star Trek fans because Archer gets assigned a Klingon lawyer and he's like, "You're a lawyer?" And the lawyer says something like, "Yes, did you think all Klingons were warriors?"
Oh, they finally answer that. They read the message boards and were like, "This is what people want. They want to see what other Klingons are."
Yep, they want to see the boring part of Klingon life. Here we go.
You asked for it. Yeah. You're getting it.
So, I mean, well, let's go watch and find out.
Okay. I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
It's been so long. Like, I've seen an Enterprise episode.
That sounded nothing like Scott Bakula.
But you already knew that. Oh,
boy. All right. Pass. It's a pass.